Hey guys, one of the most anticipated Metroidvanias right up alongside Silksong just got a huge update, as we are now celebrating 2 years since the Kickstarter campaign for Crowsworn. There was a short Q&A stream with the devs. Look at those nerds. We got a new trailer showing off some pretty awesome gameplay, and of course we finally got our hands on the true backer beta build. So let's get right into the new stuff, starting with the trailer breakdown. First of all, we got a nice new banger added to the soundtrack. The Crowsworn music director has been killing it. The trailer starts off with an animation that in the full game will probably be tied to getting the scythe throw ability. We get a look at some ruins lit up by a gorgeous background. It's got a similar golden light to the area where we fight Sir Garen in the boss demo. Some glimpses at different levels like the sewers and these flying skulls. We will get more into the enemy design later in the video. There's some footage of abilities like air dash, which we've already seen, and there's the dive kick looking really fluid and fun to use. Speedrunners are going to be loving this game for sure. And if we slow down the footage here, you can see one of the javelins that Sir Garen uses in his fight coming down from above. So this is probably a sequence in the game leading up to his boss fight, where you have to keep moving and seek cover from his javelin throws. Will make finally reaching, fighting, and taking him down much more satisfying. The combat just keeps looking more and more insane, comboing the dive kick into the guns, all these different corving abilities, the movement options. There's also some sweet new idle animations for Mr. Protagonist. Obviously with drip like that, you know he's gonna be class. And then, oh yeah, we finally get the big guns, literally. This boss looks awesome, sporting a slick top hat and drip coat. When this guy isn't blasting you with his oversized blunderbuss, he's trying to teach you that manners maketh man with that cane of his. This is probably going to be a reoccurring character, whether it's a rival battle or he becomes friendly after the fight, sort of like a test. We also see footage of the ogre fight that's in the demo, and I actually have a lot of good things to say about this fight, but again, later. Holy that's awesome. He just body slams using the force of his pistol blast. We get an even better look at the grafting system, which is almost like an armor system. Each limb, your head, and your torso get its own slot for equipment that gives you various stat buffs and bonuses. From standard, get more experience, like the Silver Serpent Ring from Dark Souls, to some more complex ones, like deal extra damage for each health point you are missing, and so on. We get a very brief glimpse at the protagonist doing a crazy Dante-like attack where he floats in the air blasting downwards with his pistols, showing off even more crazy combos and Devil May Cry inspiration with this high level combat. The trailer was short, but awesome, and was a really cool way to hype up the demo. Now I'm going to explain this demo as if you are one of the many who did not back, so have no context and no access to this. So for those of you who did play, please bear with me for a bit. This demo is actually made up entirely of cut levels, made early in development, as well as a few specifically designed rooms to help shape it into its own mini Metroidvania-like structure. There are secrets, collectibles, NPCs, a couple of boss fights, and of course, this guy. This doesn't mean that the enemies, items, boss fights, and abilities we use in the demo are cut content, however. So there's still a good bit to discuss, and a good bit of features that are going to be in the main game. But, and this is important, this demo is not at all a preview of the final product. We're still a good ways from the launch of the game in my estimation. This is purely a show of good faith demo to give people who back the game a glimpse at what the overall feel and gameplay will be like in the final product. With that being said, the first thing I want to talk about is the animation, because it's so good. It's very fluid, and while you can tell the difference between most of what is hand animated and not, doesn't really stand out enough to matter. The levels themselves are pretty empty, but like I said, they are cut areas and missing a lot of the assets that would help fill in the specific themes of each area. More furniture, rocks, geography, I don't know. And there is still a good bit of that environmental storytelling that we have all grown to love from games like Bloodborne and Hollow Knight in this demo. There's also a good number of secrets and not puzzles, but like environmental navigation problems to solve. So like, find the way to hit this lever, time your way through this god-awful hentai section, see the reward and find your way to it later, you know, the standard Metroidvania fare. The enemy design is on point, and something that I am absolutely kicking myself in the head for not noticing before is about how much importance grafting has on the overall game. I talked a bit about the grafting mechanic in regards to the protagonist, but even the enemies themselves are mismatched zombies cobbled together from bits of flesh and metal. I hesitate to speculate on the lore too much, but all I will say is, way back in the day, I theorized we would be getting into some serious Lovecraftian stuff like Bloodborne did, and I think the grafting together enemies will play into that in a big bad way. The same with blood, which is referenced in both dialogue as well as a couple of power-ups. For example, the item we use to heal is called the carrion flask. Carrion is the term for the rotting and decaying flesh of dead animals and beings. Obviously, this is a reference to crows and their refined food palette, but it's also tied into the way that the flask operates. You refill your heal by striking enemies. In-game, it's a way to balance out difficulty, but lore-wise, it also makes sense that you're literally striking the flesh off of these rotten grafted beasts and filling up your flask with it. Boomers might call this metal, me I call this edgy. Pretty cool either way. We also get access to the Down Slam Corvian power-up, and in the cinematic we see that the protagonist slams his hands into the fingers of this amygdala-looking creature, spilling blood into the bowl and transfusing himself with the power. We see more of these creepy statues around that give us both a full heal as well as filling up the malice meter. And while it's called malice, the bowl these creatures are holding is definitely filled with a red liquid that could be argued is blood. So we will just have to wait and see on this. The combat is fun. Strangely, we didn't get access to the guns in the main demo, so we didn't get to try any of the crazy combos and stuff like we did in the boss demo, but the enemy design and AI are pretty awesome. Most of the time, and especially in Metroidvanias, enemies basically just exist to be hit. They don't react much to the player, and just kind of do their path while you kill them. In Crowsworn, they feel a bit more alive. Enemies will dodge your attacks, there are nice combinations of ranged and melee fighters, and a good mix of both fodder as well as elite enemies. There's also a section in the demo that's basically a combat room, where the doors lock while you fight specific combo waves of enemies. I love this mechanic in games, so hopefully there are a good number of these, especially as we get access to the higher combat abilities. Nothing like a room to both test what you have learned, but also just to let loose all of the skills you have acquired up until that point. I do want to spend a second on one of the few things I didn't like in this demo in regards to the economy and merchant. Not Bernard, the nose is amazing. There's a mechanic in the game where you hit enemies and crystals to gain anime. Anime is Crowsworn's main currency. However, when you talk to the merchant, he mentions it is too raw to be used in its base form, so you need an item that can transform it into usable currency. The problem I have is that the prism that does this is limited, starting out so you can only use 400 anime at a time. Now this could be just a demo thing, and obviously it's still in development, subject to change, all of that. But it's basically signaling to me that these prisms are going to be items you either collect or upgrade in the world. Why is this bad? Metroidvanias are all about exploring areas and finding cool stuff in them, but if the item I find is simply something I use to be able to spend another item I find to use, it's a bit redundant and could end up feeling like a disappointing reward to pick up. Now to end on a good note, obviously the highlight of the demo for me are the boss fights, and can I just say, especially for the ogre, but all of them, there is something so well designed about these guys, and we can see it in the trailer bosses as well. But it's a feature that you might not notice right away. Rather, you would notice if it's missing. So often in games, and especially indie Metroidvanias, while the boss moveset might have specific tells, Crowsworn just seems to be on the next level. For example, a boss might make a specific sound or stance, but even just this ogre's charge attack feels so well telegraphed and animated, that even though it comes out at a really fast pace, you can clearly understand what the boss is going to do and react right away. This is a huge key in making great boss fights, and so far Crowsworn is doing a bussin' job. You might think we have been spoiled with the amount of boss fights shown off in demos and trailers, but this game is going to have a huge amount, and I'm loving the quality so far. And yeah, just look at that animation. So clean. The demo was also made to showcase the challenge level and difficulty curve of Crowsworn, and I think it's pretty well balanced. I love a good challenge, and for me it was kind of easy, but devs also want people to beat their game. So while the end of the demo did ramp up, it wasn't anything too crazy. And it was only about 60% as hard as the end game of Crowsworn will be. There will also be difficulty levels, so people who are more into the story and exploration of gaming shouldn't have to be worried. There are still secrets in the demo to be found and much more to talk about in the future. But man, ever since the Kickstarter trailer, this game seems to be getting better and better. The devs seem really open to feedback, which is just another sign that this game is steadily heading in the right direction. I honestly can't wait for it to release before